Hey everybody, it's Thursday. Yes, I don't normally do public videos on Thursday. This is a makeup for yesterday. If you want to see videos on Thursday, if you want that extra day of the week of Leanna and Kat, so we have Link and Zelda in the co-pilot seat, double decking it. If you like videos on Thursday, there's a video for patrons every Thursday, patron exclusive. So help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. I know some of you can't right now because of temporary layoffs due to the coronavirus, but for those of you who can, it helps. And as you know, based on yesterday, I have been playing through Doom Eternal. You can join me on Twitch Thursday afternoon, so today at 1 p.m., so 2 hours after this video goes live, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's 11 a.m. Pacific time, I think. It's the people from places that aren't Canada stream. We get a lot more Europeans on Thursdays because of time zones, or Tuesdays at 6 p.m. So those are my two Twitch times. And playing Doom Eternal, it's interesting. Having been gaming long enough to remember when the original Doom came out, it makes me wonder because, first-person shooters have gone full circle now from a game that started with, for people who don't know, first-person shooters were called Doom clones before they were called first-person shooters. And so we've gone full circle from first-person shooters primarily being a multiplayer pastime to Doom coming back with a really great single-player experience in games like Metro, the Metro series, focusing on single-player experiences. And all of a sudden, single-player is back in fashion. And to me, that's awesome. I don't like the multiplayer experience. I don't like sitting in lobbies. I don't like having to configure matches. I don't like playing with strangers. I like me and the game and get good. And so it's interesting to see things come full circle. Let's face it, maybe if I'd grown up in the era of multiplayer, I would have a different relationship with it. But gaming to me is my ability to get away from people, other than the very nice people in the Twitch chat that, tell me where to find secrets and stuff like that. I always whenever somebody does it, it's like, is this cheating? No, this is just socializing. It's made me think of some of the other things that games used to do that games are coming back to doing. And it's almost like we're coming back to games for gamers. And I think this is great. I really like the fact that, first of all, normal difficulty, or on Doom, what's it called? Hurt Me Plenty, that I'm playing on, the base difficulty of a game isn't nerfed. It's like, hey, you actually have to be able to have some skill at this game to get through it. Because for years, and it was the first person shooters that started with this, primarily Halo. The Gears normal difficulty was okay. The Halo normal difficulty, it wasn't. Default difficulty for Halo campaign was hard. Hard mode, not normal mode. Normal was way too easy for anybody with any experience gaming. And I always found that really frustrating because back in the day, the first time you played a game, you played through it on normal. Why? Because it was normal difficulty. It was the default original experience. And what you used the harder difficulties for was to play through again with the new skills you've learned. It was feeling the glorious euphoria of get good. Now, I think we all sort of lean towards play on hard, maybe normal if we hadn't played in a while. And I guess I'm being a bit of a purist, but normal mode should be normal mode. And I'm very happy that games are not afraid to challenge the players again. Other stuff that I'm enjoying is true exploration, not stuff shoved places because hey, we should do it for like collectibles and replay value. No, there's actually cool little secrets in places, hidden areas, little Easter eggs that serve nothing but just kind of a giggle. Answer backs to there's a Commander Keen Easter egg in Doom that I found on Twitch the other day. It's like this I forget what it's called. It's like this fish thing hanging off the edge of a cliff, but these secrets, games designed to be played through multiple times so you really get your money out of them. I'm really enjoying this. I mean, even the open world experience that obviously we didn't have back in the day because the computing power and the networking power just wasn't there. But, in a game like Death Stranding, exploration is far more meaningful than it often is. Like, the experience of just doing is coming back into games instead of, I have to explore to collect certain things that are a numeric set that give me something of value instead of just the joy of the game. It felt very, it felt like a chore, like you have to get this stuff to get something instead of it being play, which games are supposed to be play. And I start thinking back to, some of the great games in gaming history, and not all of them became massive hits. I mean, obviously Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog and all that stuff. I mean, they had level design down. And one of the things multiple people I've seen comment, and I totally agree, is that Doom Eternal, you don't get lost in the maps. And this is something that I found with I got lost in Halo all the time, but all the maps just look so similar because they're basically built, for multiplayer purpose, but then you put game objectives in them. Doom, you don't get lost the same way. There's enough interesting difference. And I don't know if that's because there are still storage caps on discs. Doom is really well optimized, but I don't know if it's because we now just, the technology is caught up to expectations again or what. I mean, we're coming to the end of the console cycle, so it can't be that. It's gotta be design. And they just decided to make it that way instead of being kind of lazy with level design. Spend a ton on art, do amazing jobs, like amazing backgrounds, and make the game look really pretty, but then make the level design be samey because I guess the base gamer didn't care. And it's almost like that generation is now sort of coming to a point, maybe through more experience to kind of retro throwback indie games, or I don't know, actually experiencing the older games, that shooter generation is becoming more discerning and wanting more of a complete experience out of their games. And I think it's so interesting that some of the stuff, I mean, Doom is so retro, right? With the 1-up indicators. There's just things that it's clearly just, we are going to make this a 90s homage with modern graphics and some cool little gameplay tweaks. And we are in sort of a similar feeling right now. I mean, in the early 80s, there was, that particular recession. A lot of people don't realize that's what the movie Ghostbusters was really about, that white-collar professionals, people with college degrees, were forced to do jobs that wore overalls, blue-collar jobs, because they were getting cut from like university staff and things like that. That's what was going on in the early 80s, early to mid 80s when Ghostbusters was made. And, that sort of humbling experience was infused into Ghostbusters. And of course, 83, 84, 85, 83 was Atari Shock. But the 70s were a period when everybody lost their jobs and then had to get them back again. And there was this, explosion of creativity in gaming then. And then the mid 80s coming out of that Ghostbusters recession type thing, there was an explosion of creativity with the Nintendo again. And then in the early mid 90s, we had Doom and Mortal Kombat and the original PlayStation. And there was a gross amount of uncertainty there as well. I remember being in grade 10. I remember it most acutely. We were told by our teachers in schools, you're going to get out of school and not be able to get a job. Just be prepared for it now. You're not going to be able to get a job coming out of school because the population is aging. Everybody's, they're going to suck up all the resources and they're going to retire later and later because they won't be able to afford to retire. Guess who gets screwed with that? Sorry, teenage kids. It's you. You're at the bottom of the hill. The shit rolls down. We were told this in school. Awesome, huh? And there was again this explosion of creativity in, play pretend worlds. And it was violent and nihilistic, but it was because we were dealing with a very nihilistic world. And they weren't wrong, was the thing. Employment has gotten increasingly challenging as, older generations don't want to retire or can't afford to retire. But let's face it, once they retire, they eliminate the full-time salaried job and get a contractor in its place. It's not just the retirement issue. But we're in another period of uncertainty, and we have this incredible explosion once again of mainstream creativity in AAA games. And it's really nice to see, we're in a period right now after it was all shooters for ages and then all open world adventure games for ages. We're in a period now where it's kind of everything, isn't it? It's the way it kind of was late Nintendo, early PS1, though the adventure game was the big, and of course, platformers like Mario were a trend as well. But there's a dominant little genre, and then there's you can't do anything else, but there are not many games that are made outside of whatever's dominant at the time. Right now, we have a really good mix. We're still getting those open world games occasionally, but we're getting good single player shooters. We're getting interesting, tactical games. We're getting really cool adventure games again, and then we're getting these really interesting hybrids. And it really much feels more like when I was growing up. I'm Atari generation. But, if you didn't like this kind of game, don't play this sort of game, play this other sort of game. There's plenty to go around. And that's really exciting. And I think it's interesting that certain little things like humor coming back into games again. Not just like physical humor or big broad humor, but like turns of phrase and cheeky little things in the background. They're not afraid to do verbal humor and then figure out a way to completely rewrite the joke for localization. And I'm not sure if the companies have just stopped crapping their pants about profit margins, or the developers are like, you need to sell games. If we keep pumping out overpriced crap, people aren't going to buy our games full price anymore. Maybe that's it. Maybe consumers have finally voted with their wallets, and game companies recognize, no, we can't just We can't just sell a game based on multiplayer. That to me was one of the absolute worst trends in gaming, was games with like a 5 to 6 hour campaign and then multiplayer. Because how did you learn the game, really? And if, there's a real art to a single player experience that multiplayer just can't capture. Multiplayer's fun when it's the right group. I actually enjoy Grand Theft Auto 5 multiplayer much more than I enjoy single player. That's like the one exception. But something else may be going on here too, which is why the games have gotten so good. The independent game market. The fact that somebody like a Hideo Kojima can go and do a deal with Sony, and Sony will go, what? I don't even understand what you're trying to do here, but we've seen your track record. We trust you. Your name alone is going to bring in games, so we don't need a major publisher. We're going to be your publisher. Go nuts. Hideo Kojima, you want a naked Norman Reedus in your game? And Guillermo del Toro, meat puppet, not understanding personal space, and a baby in a jar who's your sidekick? Go for it. This would have been unimaginable Halo 2, Halo 3 era, right? This feels more like the PlayStation 1 or even the PlayStation 2 era, where really weird concepts got traction just because there were so many games being made and so many people buying games and so much money to go around relative to the cost of games being made. But now it's like, game designers, if they're not happy at AAA, they do that. They leave. They form their own companies. So not only do we get these really cool indie games, but we also get better AAA games because AAA companies have to retain those employees they'd otherwise lose to the indie space, which means the accountants and the marketing departments who are making everything suck have lost power. And now the developers have the ability to do what they want again because they have an option. I mean, okay, indie gaming is not an easy life. But you know what? AAA game dev isn't an easy life. And once they actually stop these crazy crunches, AAA gaming will seem more desirable again, but they have to stop the crunch. They really do. They have to stop the crunch. Crunch should be working till 8, a couple nights a week leading up to it, or maybe like working till 8 p.m. the week before launch or something like that. Not these crazy, like a month of 14-hour days constantly. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody. It is not a sign you love your job. It is not a sign that you're just so passionate about your game. It is a sign that your company is not properly run and your milestones are not being managed, and top down, you have an organizational and management problem. That's what crunch means, especially now since there's a lot more permission to push games back. And I think also the fact that there isn't that stigma when a game is pushed now, I think really is resulting in higher quality. Do you remember back in the days where if a game got pushed back, it was usually an indication that something's wrong with it, it's not very good? That's not true anymore. Now, games are pushed back. We sort of expect big games to push back. I mean, when they originally announced the Cyberpunk release date, I was like, no way. Every time, Naughty Dog says, oh, we're going to come out for holiday, I'm like, 6 months, it's going to come out in May. But that's okay, right? I wish they would plan for that from the beginning. Like Sony with Naughty Dog and say, yeah, we can get Last of Us 2 out for, holiday 2019. Okay, so May 2020? It's just the reality of trust me, like I'm working on Boss Fight right now, and it's just interactive linear media. Like, people voted on plot points. Even then, whenever you have this interactive component, whenever there's a player input, you cannot predict how long certain things are going to take, right? Because I couldn't set the plot accurately because I had 9 different outcomes based on, well, it was 4 different voting things, but one is just whether I continue to hate The Sims, and that doesn't affect the outcome. But I think it was actually 12 different outcomes, depending. But it was just like different combinations of the three questions regarding Princess Sparkle Muffin, Social Justice Warrior, and Beelzebub. And depending on which outcomes people picked, the combination of those three factors, it was a totally different ending. It was totally different midpoints. And that created, like, yeah, I only outlined it. I didn't write it. I couldn't write the dialogue until I knew which bosses people were going to vote for and, which outcomes it was. And it just created, I would do it again in a heartbeat, but it just created a lot of variables that it's like, that's a really cool idea, but that's going to take more time. Having people write the backstories. Oh my God, they came up with stuff that was more ambitious than I ever would have. And this is the same thing game companies have to choose. They have to decide somebody comes to you midstream with a really great idea. Do you say not now because we have to hit a deadline? Or do you say, yeah, we're going to push 3 to 6 months because this is too good to pass up on. We need to implement this now. And at one point, you do have to just make the series you have with the resources you have. But in the first half of your development, there's still time. And I think it's really important. You see some of that excitement backing games again. Games don't seem to be on a treadmill anymore. And as a gamer and as a creator and as a writer and as somebody who is really, really interested in design, I couldn't be happier. Like, I think it's also my last theory, and you guys can add your own about why games are just so damn good now. But it's also because, I lost my thought. I remember now. It's also because this idea that consoles are dead, this is going to be the last console generation, people have stopped saying that, right? We're at the end of a very successful console generation that people thought weren't going to be that successful for economic reasons. The PlayStation 4 and the Switch did incredibly well. Xbox got to up its game. Consoles aren't going anywhere just because of that ease of use factor. And I think the game companies have finally realized that and stopped freaking out. I think the other thing that made people shut up about it is streaming games. Remember how that was going to just remove the need for the console? Remember Google Stadia? That was going to be this big disruptor? No, the hub for game subscription services, the best hub for that turned out to be consoles. So now with those subscription services, console games are viable because, younger people, subscription services for me back in the day would have been great because it's a single price. And if you don't like it, it was like we used to rent games from Blockbuster Video. Oh God, throwback, right? That's what subscription services are basically like. And, it might not be the newest game available, but there's so many games to play now that you can just work through. Again, though, because of those subscription services and because there's so many ways to save money on games, you really have to convince people to pay full price. And I think that brands like Doom that have stood the test of time and who have gone back to, this is what we do. This is what people remember us for, rip and tear until it is done. That's what we're going to give people. We're not going to worry about, diversity and inclusion and respect and all that stuff. We're going to make a really fun game that's really freaking ultra violent and you pull out Kako Demon's eyes, right? Hello, Momo. You don't like Doom, do you? Nope. It's too violent for Momo. Yeah. So Momo's saying it's time to go. But what do you guys think? Why do you think, do you agree that video games have got their mojo back? And why do you think so? Why or why not? Quite frankly, I'll read your comments. It'll just be the first few because there's not much time, but I will read your comments tomorrow on Feedback Friday. If you like this sort of stuff, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.